So this is my bag of engine parts. I've been working on those in the last day or so. Mainly what I've been doing is painting them. So I've painted them with an aluminium paint, which is part of the Alcad range. So the first thing I had to do was paint these black, and then once you've got the black layered down and dried, you can overpaint them with the aluminium paint. So all of the components of the engine have now been painted. The other thing I've been doing is looking at the fixing arrangement. So on this particular car, there are lots of screws that hold it together. Most of those screws, unfortunately, are metric cheese head with a slot, and there will be screws that are exposed on the engine once it's finished. So what I'm doing is as you can see here, I'm replacing some of those with, in this case, 8BA nuts, which were more likely to be fitted the car rather than cheesehead slotted screws. And wherever the opportunity arises, I shall be doing that. So, as you can see here, I've assembled the engine. This basically is the kit. There are one or two modifications that I've made that I'll detail. One of the problems I found was that the rubber hose, let's go to that section first. So the rubber hose is very brittle because of its age. So what I've done here, this was a length of rubber hose. So what I've done is I've actually used, it's a bit of heat shrink tubing, and made this brass pipe up to connect it to the supercharger assembly. And you can see I've also used the same material here, simply because the original material is very brittle due to its age. So that's one of the modifications I've made to the engine. The second modification I've made is I've replaced the screws, which were I think 2mm metric, or maybe 3, with 12BA nuts and bolts. I've tapped this component so that they will go in, and that's simply to reflect the fact that it will be more realistic to see hexagon heads bolts on the side of the chassis rather than it would be to see cheese head screws. And you can see I've done exactly the same thing on the other side. So that's the if you like, the basics of the engine. As I said, I've mostly glued it together, although there's an example here where you can see the screws. I'm undecided whether to try and cover them, but I think they stick out too far, so they've probably just get left in the hope that, you know, they're not that visible when the engine is complete. I mean, this particular engine comes with steel cylinders. The pistons, I'm not sure if I can demonstrate this, move. I think you just saw them move there. There is a crankshaft in the bottom. Like many plastic models, all detail that gets hidden away and is there for the pleasure of the build rather than serving any specific purpose once you've got the model completed. The other thing I did do as well was I've chosen to paint the carburetor in a brass colour rather than the grey. It would probably have been aluminium, but I just thought it added a little bit of extra detail to the engine and make it a little bit more interesting. One of the other things that you may probably notice is the actual fit of components around here isn't very good. It's it's a bit disappointing for a kit that costs so much. So you can see here, you know, it doesn't align properly. And you've got a similar thing here with the supercharger where you can see that outer rim is not engaging very well with the turbine, which it should do, but I looked in to see whether I could modify this component because the actual turbine housing is part of the engine side. The reality is, without seriously damaging this component, it probably wasn't worth it. And I'm not sure whether you can see down there, I'd have had to cut, so if you look down there, I'd have had to cut quite a bit of the supercharger away to get the alignment. So I just decided to ignore that and carry on as it is. So that's part one of the engine. I'll go on to talk about some other changes I'm making to the engine in the next video. So this is the top of the engine. There you can see the piston holes in the head. It has got moving camshafts, not that there's anything to drive them, so it's just a piece of detail that the designers put in to make the model more interesting to build. I've taken the rocker box covers, and as you can probably see, I've painted them in a more of a silvery chrome colour so that they stick out a little bit more. And one of the things that I wasn't really impressed with was there was a small spark plug moulding in here, which I didn't think was very good. So what I've done is I've cut those away. You can probably see they've been cut back. You can see a slight change in colour of the material, which is where I pulled it out. And I've made some spark plugs, and I'll show you one here. So what I did is let's see if I get this, I machined this spark plug. So that's the bottom of it. You can see it there. So see if we can get that really close. So you can see like the top of a spark plug and the bottom of the spark plug. It's based on actually a 10 scale model of a spark plug that fits my motorbike. But there it is. I've drilled a hole in the top so that I can use that to actually affix the plug suppressor and the cable, the high tension cable onto the plug. And just to go a little step further, what I've done is I've painted those. So here's the painted spark plug. I've got all 8 of them made, so they're one of the modifications that I'll be doing to the head. And let's just see if I can get one in. So what you will see in the finished head is the spark plug sticking out like that. One of the other complications with this component is you get these odd little clamps. To be honest, I haven't figured out how they're really supposed to hold, because it doesn't make any sense. And when I've put them into the assembly, they don't seem to work properly. So I've decided to abandon those. I'm gonna throw those away. And when it comes to fitting the covers, I will in fact just be gluing them into position. There's no need to get back to the camshafts at the end of the day, so I'll just glue them on and then they'll be sealed in there for the life of the model. So that's the spark plugs. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and assemble the engine. So I'll bring it back once I've assembled all the components that you've got before that you can see before you. It won't be the last engine video, because obviously there's detailing of the spark plug connections and any cables and pipes that may go onto it, and I'll come back to that in a later video. I think once I've got these components on and got the spark plugs in place, and that'll kind of be the end of the initial engine video. Watch this space. So as you can see here, I've put the rocker box covers, as we know them in the UK, on top of the camshafts, and you can probably see I've actually put the spark plugs in. So I've got my 8 spark plugs put in there now. And one other thing I did on the engine is there was on the bottom of the sump one of these chromium plated I hesitate to call them nuts, but what I've done is on the sump of the engine I've made, you can probably see it there, I've made a small sump plug with a square end of it, which would be more likely to be fitted to the car than, you know, a shiny chrome plated sump plug. So you can see that sump plug there. I've squared off the ends and stuck that in. So next thing to do is to glue the top of the engine on. So that'll be one of my next tasks. Get that round, and that will go on there. And then that will essentially be the engine complete until I start doing further detailing, such as wiring and any small pipes that may be involved. So that's the engine.